Because I would buy, they would go to like the cheapo facto frying pans, and I would buy like 10 of them, and then I'd roll them and throw them to people and stuff. And Vince was like, let's get one that he can't bend.
Jerry, I am too, because I want to tell you a little story. This jumps way ahead, but we were in a locker one time, and somebody had, I think it was Arn Anderson, had locked his bag in the locker and had a combination lock on it, like the old high school, lock, And so the lock, when it closed, it locked. I think it was Arn. I'm not sure, but anyway, they got the crowbar and they tried to pull this locker off its hinges, So Ron's sitting there, goes, "Wait till Mark gets here. Wait till Mark gets here." Mark walked in and said, Ron said, "Mark, pull that locker off." Mark put a towel on top of the locker, put a towel on the locker itself, and ripped that locker off its hinges. And
Wow.
when he did, we all said, "Mark, if we've ever offended you, we want to apologize right now."
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like that.
Oh man. Oh my God.
Ron told me the story this weekend about you ripping the frying pan in half for the shoot. And Ron was sitting there asking Bruce Pritchard, he goes, where's the gimmick frying pan? Bruce goes, "Well, this is it." Ron goes, "That's not gimmicked." I go, "That's Mark's going to rip it." And Ron goes, "No, he's not." And then when he ripped it, Ron's just like, "Oh my God."
And that was Vince trying to rib me because
I was there. I remember that. I was right there.
Really? I didn't know that part of it.
Because I would buy, they would go to like the cheapo facto frying pans, and I would buy like 10 of them, and then I'd roll them and throw them to people and stuff. And Vince was like, let's get one that he can't bend. I want you to go and here, and it was like stainless steel. It wasn't like one of those non-stick pans like I would buy the cheap ones. And I looked and it had like metal bracketing and stuff. And that's not the one we used on TV. The one we use on TV was just a shade better than the ones that I used for show. But that one that I started trying to bend and I couldn't bend it, John, I never felt so embarrassed in my life.
Yeah.
And then
you were so mad. I remember you coming. You were pissed off, brother.
Man, I looked at it and I was like, "I'm here now." And I started cranking on it. Man, that shit was making a sound like the space shuttle was coming back into orbit. It was like, it was crazy. And I still tell people today, like one of the most incredible feats that I ever did.
Wow.
Is that the one you rolled up into like a paper? I mean, you just rolled that baby.
Like a burrito.
Like a burrito, yeah. I remember watching that, and my mouth just kept dropping and dropping. I think I was standing next to Vince. He was elbowing me. "Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this?"
I don't know why that dude wanted me to go back to being an asshole.
Mark, I've been reading a lot on different like strongmen and stuff. I love this kind of stuff. I grew up on The World's Strongest Man with Bill Kazmaier and the guys, Wide World of Sports and all
One
that.
of my idols.
I got to meet Kaz one time going through the Atlanta airport. I just randomly went up to him, and it was cool to meet, a guy you idolized as a kid,
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk that you might be the strongest man to ever walk on the planet. And if you're not, you're in the conversation, which is incredible because that's billions and billions of people. So I want to ask you, I know we're jumping ahead a little bit. I want to ask you though, take yourself out of the equation. If you're not, say, who would you consider the world's strongest man of all time to be?
Well, it's impossible for me to take myself out of the equation because of the stuff that I did. Like you saw the movie Conan that Arnold Schwarzenegger did, and the whole story behind that guy, and the character is he stopped killing for the king, and he started killing because he wanted their swords. It became a sport to him to kill, and that's what happened to me. I had lifted so much in competitions that I was lifting by myself. I knew I was going to win when I got off the plane. Like there was nobody that was my equal. So I started traveling the world doing all the feats of strength that people said was done throughout history. And there was only two that I was not allowed to do. And one of which, because Terry Todd said he's 100% believed that it was phony. And then the other one was was in Halifax, Nova Scotia. You can Google the guy. His name was McCaskill, Giant McCaskill, and he lifted a 740-pound anchor. And I wanted to go and lift the anchor. And when I went up to Halifax, they wouldn't let me. It was in a museum, and they wouldn't pull it out of the museum and let me lift it. And I told them, I was like, look, I'm not going to get hurt. I'll sign anything y'all want me to sign. I'm doing this for my legacy. I'm doing it, because I know I can lift that anchor. And they were like, no, the last person that lifted it stabbed himself in the kidney and died, and that was John McCaskill. Wow. So the dude that it was named after died as a result of lifting that anchor, and they just didn't want to take a chance. And like it's I mean, John McCaskill was like Big Show. He was like Andre. He was a genetic mutant, 7 feet tall and, close to 550, 600 pounds. Like, so those you don't see people like that on Earth very often. And of course, they could do unbelievable things. But I wanted to prove that I could do it, and I didn't get the opportunity. The other one was the Paul Anderson had what they call a platform lift, where they would put like a bunch of weight on a platform, and then you basically climb underneath the platform and you lift it with your shoulders up off the blocks. And I wanted to do it. And Terry said, well, I hate to tell you, but we found we have some of the weights that, Paul Anderson had, and they might say 45 pounds, but some of them were 22, 23 pounds. He said, so like whatever that weight was is not an accurate measurement. You probably could, do that now. But I went to England and lifted Denny stones. I went to South Africa and lifted the Africa crest, the Africa stone. And, I don't know if y'all realize it or not, but like there's only about 2 or 3 plus 375-pound stones. And I lifted all 3 of them.
Wow.
And nobody else in history has done that. And then they had Thomas Inch had a dumbbell in the turn of the century. And it was called the unliftable because they would put it on the ground. And if you could lift it on top of this 1-foot podium, you would get a nickel in the circus. And he traveled all over the world, letting people try it. And they would pay a nickel every time, which the equivalent of like $5 today at that time. So like, imagine you make $5 1,000 times, you had a pretty nice, good payday. And he did that every day or every weekend. And that's how he made his living. And they said that nobody was going to be able to lift it. And the first time I touched it, I picked it up off the ground and raised it to my waist. And then I told Arnold Schwarzenegger and everybody at the Arnold, next year, I'm going to lift it over my head. And they were all laughing and stuff. But that shit stopped real quick because the next year I lifted it over my head.
It's one of the best YouTube videos that's out there. I've watched it a couple times. The progression of you lifting it the first year, and then the next year lifting it over your head. It's incredible to watch.
Yeah, and then Adolf Apollon, they used to have small trains that used to go through France, and Apollon used one of those wheels, one of those train axles, as a, they said that nobody has any evidence that he did it, but he said that he did, so we're gonna go with that. And John Davis and Norbert Szymanski, both of those lifters lifted the Apollon wheels. And they were both the heavyweight strongmen during their times. And when I got to Columbus, Ohio, I told Terry Todd, I said, I'm gonna lift it 3 times for all 3 people that lifted it in history. And Terry was like, hey, let's just focus on lifting it 1 time. And I said, all right. And I did. I lifted it 3 times for the people that are supposed that people that lifted throughout history. So
tell us a little bit about that Terry Todd too. He's an important guy in your career.
Yeah, Dr. Terry.
Finish your story there. I just wanted to make sure I remembered to talk about
Yeah,
that.
I and then there's like the Venture Stone. So I traveled lifting all of these implements throughout history, and I did that. No other human has been able to do it. If they take the best strongman today, Hafthor Bjornsson, Eddie Hall, Brian Shaw, they couldn't do it. I've watched them try to do the inch. They can't do the inch.
Wow.
So, like, when it comes to who the guy was, like you talking to the guy. I'm on my Ric Flair shit when it comes to when it comes to who's the strongest person. Like I didn't have an equal.
You're not in the top 5. You're in the top 1.
Yeah, and you know what's amazing?
There's only
Mark?
a one.
You know what's amazing, Mark, is you're not talking about just being it's like they used to say about Kurt Angle. He was really good. No, he wasn't. He was the best in the world. There's a big
Best
difference
on earth.
A lot of people are really good. He was the best out of 8 billion people. That's a big freaking difference.
Yeah.
They're talking about you being the strongest man, literally, of all time. That is absolutely
all
incredible.
time, John.
Yeah, and I feel truly blessed to be able to have lived the life that I lived. But none of that would have been possible if it wouldn't have been for Terry Todd. Because
How did he come into your life?
They read the stories about me as a high schooler, and when you have remember I told you about my uncle. When I heard my grandmother would tell me the stories about him picking up a wagon and him pulling 700-pound logs out of the woods, and I was like, bullshit, whatever. Like, y'all just trying to make me feel weak. Like that was my mentality as a stupid young kid. And but Terry had heard the stories about what I was doing and was like, that's bullshit. Like, it ain't no way that's the truth. And if it is the truth, then they pumping this kid so full of drugs that he ain't gonna live another 5 years. And so him and his wife Jan, they came to Silsbee. And they see me in a competition in Little Cypress, Mauriceville, and then they came to Silsbee afterwards to meet me and talk to my family. And basically, Terry told my mom that he is the foremost expert in the world on the history of what we call physical culture, like all lifting, bodybuilding, strength for sports, and the training of people in sport. My education was really is biomechanical science, like how bipedal animals get better. And you can look at my kids and they'll explain that you can see the difference between them and other kids. It's not just the genetics of it, it's the fact that they lift correctly. That it looks easy when they do it because they do it right. And they're trained to do it right. And That's what Terry did for me. He showed me how to do things correctly, and he introduced me to the history. And he would say, "Look, if you can know what happened before you, then you can know how to change the outcome." And he talked about Hannibal and had me read books about strategy, and that's where the philosophical mark comes into play when I talk, and even when I wrestled. I wanted to tell stories that was systematic stories, because that's the way wrestling is intended. You get hurt and you can't do something, and you try it again, you can't do it, but then the power comes over you, and then you're finally able to do it, and you win, and now you collapse, and that withered, arm or leg or whatever, you can barely walk, but you were victorious. Terry taught me that. And he was the first strength coach. There was no such thing as a strength coach before Terry. He went to the University of Texas. Next time y'all come here, in the north end of the stadium is the Letcher Stark Center. They found it. It's a 22,000 square feet building in the north end of the stadium. It's the largest physical culture library in the world. And Gerald, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I've probably read 50, 60% of the material in that library.
Wow.
And Terry knew everything about that library.
Wow.
I've held in my hand Jack Johnson's boxing gloves. Wow. And his the outfit that he fought in the World Championship. I mean, Primo Caminera, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, like boxing stuff, but also they got Andre the Giant stuff in there.
Wow.
They got Milo Steinborn stuff in there. Like the Mighty Gama. Like, you Google the Mighty Gama. You talk, Iron Sheik was a bodyguard of the Sheikh of Iran. Mighty Gama is the Michael Jordan of all of the bodyguards. He didn't carry a gun. He carried a baton and a short curved knife, and they said that he could kill 10 men without breaking a sweat.
Wow.
Like, so you go through this library and you see all this history of men that were greater than you. And you learn that, damn, I'm not the only one. And that's what Terry wanted me to see. But it took till I was probably 22, 23 before I realized that there was something greater than beyond my nose.
Yeah.
And, like, I spent the rest of my life trying to make up for it. And when I came into wrestling, bro, like, I knew I was a star. I knew that I could do stuff that other men couldn't.